Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday. What's the date? 23, 24, January 2021. I'm off to walk in the woods with Pepper. And today's subject is another Mars one. Mars first missions. I say that plural because I'm going to break it down into two categories. One, the very first missions, which are going to be unmanned, and then the manned missions to follow. So we'll go off into the woods in the winter and talk about that. I'm going to make, first I'm going to focus on SpaceX missions. They've demonstrated the best focus and competency in an attempt to get to Mars. They've certainly already demonstrated that they can get there with their Starman mission, which made it all the way out to Mars and is headed on the way back, I think. Not sure where the position is. So they know, and we know, they can get to Mars. I'm going to make some assumptions. I think they're fairly sensible ones. The first being, I don't think it's unrealistic to suggest that their current Starship is going to be successful. Their iterations have progressed very nicely, and I certainly appreciate the way they're going about it with the best scale to work at is 12 inches to the foot, and failure isn't something that is feared with SpaceX. It doesn't delay them in any ways. They're anticipating failures, they're expecting them, and then they're learning from them quite effectively. Another assumption is that they will land successfully. That's just for discussion's sake. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of failures in the meantime. But really the Starship is just a scaled up version of Falcon 9, and all the problems that they're dealing with right now, or all the development issues that they're having now, are really simply engineering issues that they're familiar with because they have Falcon 9 to demonstrate the things that they're currently working on are quite solvable. So getting the Starship into orbit really isn't very complicated. And as Mr. Musk has said, the complicated part is actually building the manufacturing process, since he has suggested that he wants an awful lot of ships. He has to get that solved, just like he has that issue with Tesla Motors. So getting this Starship launched and successfully landed back on Earth, so the re-entry, getting into orbit, That's all stuff that there should be very, very confident in accomplishing. Now, the one new thing that is going to hold things up, I think, is in autonomous in-orbit refueling. No one's ever done that, and that is going to be a big unknown that needs to be resolved. I'm sure they will. The mechanics of it seem to be reasonably straightforward, if I may be so arrogant about that. But it is still something that no one's ever done, so they're going to have to figure that out from scratch. That's important because when they get to Mars, and let's talk about the first mission to Mars, which will be a cargo ship of some kind. It needs to be kept in mind that that ship is never coming back. Let's assume that it gets off Earth, it gets to Mars, it successfully lands. It's not going to have the fuel to get back. But really, my belief is that that will be a thoroughly successful mission, and that really should be the full focus of the mission. Getting off Earth, getting to Mars, land successfully. Nothing else should have priority over that. There may be, extraneous things, but don't pack it with a whole bunch of science. Don't pack it full of a whole bunch of equipment. It's likely not going to land successfully, so there's no point in wasting all that hardware. And even if it does land successfully, any other things that may appeal to people, certainly scientists and whatnot, should not be included as any sort of priority. They'll want, weather stations and cameras and sensors of all sorts, but really those should be all focused specifically on successfully landing and keeping the ship on Mars all in one piece. As I said, you're not going to get it back because it won't have the fuel. And I think it is important for every mission, certainly in the early phases, to have as narrow a focus on its what they want to accomplish as possible. So another thing that Elon Musk has mentioned is the need for accurate landings. Now, most recently, he's talked about the first stage, the super heavy not super heavy. What is it? I don't know. The first stage of the Starship possibly being caught before it touches the ground by the launch tower, which will require an enormous amount of assurance that it can target the landing zone as accurately as possible. Now, he has mentioned that before, this new idea about capturing the first stage, but that accuracy is equally as important for landing on Mars. Why? Well, you see, The first ship that successfully lands there isn't going to have fuel to get back. Possibly the second ship to go there will have certainly the first iteration of fuel generation equipment on board to make fuel on Mars. That's a known process. It's just a matter of actually getting the hardware there and scaling it up to something that's actually useful. So the second ship goes there, and it's a possibility that it will essentially just fuel itself. Something that's more important, though, I think, would be to fuel up the first ship. What that means is they need, not me, they need an autonomous system to hook up between two ships and fuel. That also means that you need a super accurate landing because the second ship has to land right next to the first one. You can't have it like 2 kilometers away, 5 kilometers away, and expect to hook up the two of them for fueling. Now, even if that scenario isn't sensible, you're still going to need autonomous fueling of some kind and accurate landing. Certainly later on, you really want to be able to land specifically in exactly the spot that you want, that's best suited for the situation at the time. So you're going to have several ships going there with the possibility of a fueling station at some point. But it's going to be quite a few launches and successful landings before you're going to be sending humans. It's not like you're going to land the first ship and say, oh, we've got it all solved and we can send 100 people on the next ship. No. I would say a minimum of 5 successful landings on Mars by cargo ships before you even think of sending people. And in the meantime, those ships, those cargo ships, will be taking equipment, food supplies, raw materials to build shelters. There's all sorts of different scenarios for what they're going to use for shelters. But it will be a supply base is what they'll be establishing. Hopefully, that's in theory with regards to first getting the ships to land successfully, irrespective of where they're going to land them. And that, I guess, they'll have to be very selective because you're not going to be like what we're doing right now is landing all sorts of different places on Mars with individual pieces of hardware, which is perfectly sensible as they sample different areas of Mars to see what it's made of and what the resources are like or spread over large areas. SpaceX is going to have to pick one spot and everything going to land there. And that's essentially where their first base, their first human base, is going to be. So there will be a considerable amount of debate over where's the best place to establish their first base. Okay. Next topic will be about the first human expeditions to Mars. See you then.